During the 80 years since the airplane was invented, the U.S. has become a nation of flight. We have grown to depend on air transport to move freight as well as people across countries, continents, and oceans. Modern jets fly great distances quickly and economically, but they need long runways in order to take off and land. Helicopters don't need runways to operate, so they can reach remote areas, but they are relatively slow and expensive when traveling over 100 miles. This strange-looking craft could be the happy medium. It's the XV-15 Tiltrotor, an experimental vertical takeoff and landing aircraft being flight tested at NASA's Ames Research Center near San Francisco. A pair of 25-foot prop rotors mounted on engines at each wingtip enable the XV-15 to take off and land like a helicopter. Once in the air, the engines are rotated forward, and the XV-15 becomes an airplane capable of flying at speeds up to 350 miles per hour. With its engines angled only slightly, the tiltrotor can operate from a runway as a short takeoff and landing airplane, making it possible to lift heavier payloads into the air. The tiltrotor deputy program manager at Ames is Jim Lane.
A craft like this is important because it really does some things that no other types of aircraft do, and it does these things very efficiently. For example, helicopters are tremendously inefficient with respect to distance that you travel and fuel that you consume. This type of aircraft can perform most tasks, if ultimately not all tasks, that helicopters can perform, is much more fuel efficient, is much faster, and can cover larger distances, for example. So we feel there's a place for it, and a real place, in both the civilian and the military communities.
A tiltrotor's speed and comfort would make it an ideal intercity transport, capable of passenger runs of up to 200 miles, the distance, for instance, between New York and Washington, D.C. It could also be the most economical way to supply oil rigs more than 100 miles from shore.
Not had them yet, have we? Of course, you can't look up to them.
The tiltrotor's speed and endurance make it perfect for long-range rescue operations. It could search for 3.5 hours and then fly survivors to a hospital 200 miles away. Anyone who lives near a major airport can tell you about the problem of noise. But the tiltrotor is quiet, considerably quieter than a helicopter, and much less noticeable than an airplane when it flies 1,000 feet over a city. 2 tiltrotors have been delivered to NASA and are undergoing extensive flight testing so that engineers will know the precise limits of their performance. When that's complete, simulated missions will be flown for the Army, Navy, and the civilian community. The XV-15 Tiltrotor, an experimental vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, being tested today to meet tomorrow's transportation needs.
It is 1982, and our first film is an update on the scissor wing aircraft. If you'll recall, this is